When it comes to mid-sized, dependable, off-road capable trucks, the Tacoma TRD Pro has very much enjoyed its time atop the throne. But as more gladiators have entered the arena, Toyota hasn't sat back and enjoyed what this has succeeded in. It has decided to expand and brought forward a new entrant, a new gladiator to the challenge. This is the Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter. And this has a very different mission than we find here in the TRD Pro, but these two should work side by side to bring forward new customers to the Toyota line, increase the diversity of the available options for those off-road focused individuals, and now you get to decide which of these is a better fit for you. Let's start here with the interior of the Trailhunter. You'll see up in the door panel here that we have a gray interior with an accent stitching color. That's more of a yellow gold than we'll see in some of the other trims, and that's going to be one of the accent colors here for this Trailhunter model. You'll also see down below the Trailhunter logo, and since this is an entirely new trim, we get an entirely new logo. And we are going to see this throughout the vehicle, but here on the inside of the door, passenger and driver, we see it just on the left. We also see this strip here that we'll take a closer look at when we get further inside. On the inside here, you'll notice again that color stitching. We get some stitch pieces and some piping that runs alongside of it. That's going to run the length of the seat. And the seat itself is a fairly attractive design. It is heated, it is ventilated, so we have some perforations here and then some stripes along the lower back. But moving into the rest of the interior, you will mostly see that new design here on the dashboard. And it is sort of a speckled, checkered, not quite technical camouflage that we see in the TRD Pro, but it is a textured design and it adds a lot of depth to this interior. We have the raised Toyota badging, and that is going to be outlined in that accent color, which we do see then just below here on the glove box. It may not be the easiest to see, but this model has a unique party trick, and that is the ability to change the color of the fog lights. So we have our rear tailgate light, we have the light bar, but then we have this fog light that can change from yellow to amber with the press of a button. Now, what's not entirely unique to this model is the auxiliary switches, 1, 2, and 3, essentially pre-wired. We'll find that over in the TRD Pro, but it is certainly a nice touch. The back seats have that same look, and generally speaking, I'm a big fan of a gray interior, and that accent yellow gold is a really nice touch. But the rest of the rear here is just like we'll find through the rest of the Tacoma lineup. Since these are both the top model, we'll get the large screen in both, but from just a farther back view, that is what you can expect from the Trailhunter interior, and we can see just off in the distance. Next thing we'll do is go take a look at the TRD Pro. Because these trucks both have very different attitudes, we do get different interiors as well. So down where we saw the accent strip and badging for the Trailhunter, we see it for the TRD Pro, but it is the much more conventional and familiar TRD Pro design. And farther up here on the door panel, we have black insert, but we also have the red stitching because red is the Pro color, and we are going to see that throughout the rest of the interior. One of the places we'll see that design is here on the floor mats. Just like we find in the Trailhunter, they do have their own logoed floor mats. But the biggest change happens here in the seat. Now, this seat design is one of two because we have either the red or the black interior. This is the black interior, but off from the side, it looks pretty regular black. If we go farther in, we'll see that there is a technical camo pattern, and that's going to be throughout the seat design. We also see the TRD badge right up here prominently, where just about your shoulder blades will be meeting. And you also may notice that this headrest is not adjustable. So it is a different seating position and a slightly different seat than we find in the Trailhunter. That is something that you will want to try out, because if you are a larger individual, this might be a bit of a squeeze. That camo design will also be found in the driver's seat, as well as the red accent stitching here along the side and up the rest of the seat. Now, you don't get the same piping that you would do in the Trailhunter, but you do get red accent stitching. As you move over to the rest of the interior, again on the dashboard, we are getting more of a carbon fiber look here in the dash with the raised Toyota logo, red accent, and down in the glove box area, we do get the red stitching. Overall, this is a bit more tame or a little bit more conventional, leaning heavily into the red and black side of the interior. We also find a red stripe down in the gear shifter as well as where we would traditionally find it in the center of the steering wheel, as well as the red TRD logo below. This is a little bit more of the traditional, aggressive, sporty nature, and it is going to be a distinct difference than we find in the Trailhunter. But the biggest difference actually is only visible from the rear seat. Another thing we find here that is going to be different between the two vehicles is going to be just to the left of the steering wheel. Now, these button banks are not totally unique. We have the auxiliary switches that you do find in the TRD Pro and the Trailhunter both. We have our rear light for the truck bed, but over here we see the TRD light bar. And that's going to be different than we find in that Trailhunter that has its own light bar. And what is an especially unique feature is the color changing fog lights. Now those will change between white or amber, and it does so at the click of a button. The big change that we find here in the Pro that we do not in any other model is the addition of the isometric seat. Now, if you can see here, there are red shocks, and on the left and right, we have different basically fill levels and some gauges to tell you exactly where those are at. Between those two sides, we are increasing the air. This is an air to oil shock, and that's going to, with a pressure change how much this seat moves. Now, for the drive that we had here, they had it basically set to the middle because we have a lot of different shaped drivers here. But for yourself, you would want to dial it in to essentially how much movement you would want and your size and weight to make sure that it's essentially designed to meet your needs. Now, one of the big things this does is take up some extra space, but its main function is to make it more comfortable in high-speed off-road maneuvers. And since I did get to try this out on that off-road course at high speed, including a jump, I can tell you that it worked pretty well, although I didn't have a chance to compare it to the other models that didn't have this seat. One other thing to know about these seats is that they are a different size and shape than we get in the other Tacomas. If you look closely, you can see that this is about maybe 3, potentially 4 inches deeper than the other models. And that means that it's going to cut into the rear legroom for the passengers. Now, it is something that for folks who are going from the very, very top, sometimes there are sacrifices to make, and that is one to consider. The other thing is that it makes it a manual recline adjustment instead of automatic. So you'll still be able to move it forward, backwards, up and down, including having a lumbar support that is all a electronic adjustment, but you do still have to use the manual handle to change the total angle of that seat. And for some, that's not going to be any issue. For folks who want a little bit more, this might not be the exact trim you're looking for. Now, to be fair, these trucks share a lot between one another, but there are quite a few noticeable, if not smaller, differences. The first is that they are both 4-door only, and they only come with one powertrain. That's going to be the new iForce Max system, meaning that Toyota's most off-road capable trucks are now both hybrid. There might be some folks who have some specific feelings about that particular change, but what I can tell you is that you get more power, great responsiveness in throttle application, and you get better fuel economy than you would have gotten all on the previous 4-cylinder model. Here at the front of the Tacoma, we are going to see the new face of Tacoma that has been changed pretty substantially for 2024, and it's going to be carried through this model and the rest of them. But there are a few TRD Pro specifics that we do find up here. The first, I think, is the most obvious, and that's going to be the hood scoop. And while this is not a functional hood scoop, it is an aesthetic choice that people do seem to enjoy. I count myself as one of them, and there are a lot of things that are done to vehicles just for the aesthetic look, and I don't think this is a problem. If you do, feel free to let us know down in the comment section. But for now, since it matches with the rest of the accents, I'll go ahead and take it. We're also going to find down here the TRD light bar, as well as rigid lights built in for the fog lights. Now, this is one of the more popular aftermarket options you do find, and the fact that it is integrated into the vehicle, has its own switch. All of these are pluses as far as I'm concerned. And down below, we are going to have a TRD skid plate. Now, I'm not going to crawl under there just a second, but there are going to be a few differences between the protection you get here in the TRD Pro and over in the Trailhunter, but we'll cover those in just a minute. Some other similar but different pieces that we are going to find between the two models are going to start here down in the wheel well. We do have 18-inch tires on both models. They're wearing 265/70 Goodyear Wrangler Territory RT tires, again shared between the two models, but just a little bit above that, here in the fender, we're going to find a gloss black where we'll find a slightly different application over on the Trailhunter. Moving along the side, we are also going to get not a rock rail, but a rock protector, because the intent of the TRD Pro is to go very fast on lots of different terrain. And while that can include some more specific off-road, maybe crawling situations, that's not the true intent here. And because we have another option, Toyota is going farther in the high-speed direction, meaning that this is not designed for you to drop down on, but designed to protect that lower part of the vehicle from things that are going to end up flying from those big knobby tires. Both Trailhunter and TRD Pro come in a 4-door configuration, but for the TRD Pro, we are going to find an exclusively 5-foot bed, no other bed option available. For most folks, this won't be an issue because one of the things you don't want is more mass, as you are trying to be as light, nimble, and agile as humanly possible. We're also going to see some differences here in the suspension. In the TRD Pro, again, we are focused on high speed, which means we need a lot of dampening very quickly. What we have are adjustable shocks. These are going to be Fox shocks that you can change the different settings. And we're also going to see a performance exhaust, and a different version we'll find on the other truck. But for this one, we have black tips that are going to be protruding out the side of the vehicle, again, to help keep our rear overhang just a little bit lower. Out back, you'll find more important off-road components, including your rear tow hooks, which of course we hope you don't have to use, but they will be highlighted here in red. Just under here, we have high lift jack points that you'll find on all Tacomas, but certainly a nice touch. We have a steel ARB bumper back here, and again, in the aesthetic realm of things, for this tailgate, instead of saying Tacoma, you have TRD Pro embossed here in the rear power tailgate. While most of us are probably familiar with the Tacoma TRD Pro already, its close relative, the new Trailhunter, still has a very distinct personality. And a lot of that's going to be in style, design, and capability, all coming together to make a very new Tacoma. Now, we'll start here along the side, because although this is already a pretty gorgeous color, one of the first things I noticed is that on the fenders here, we don't have the gloss black that we do in the TRD Pro, we have a matte black. And there are likely a few reasons for this. The TRD Pro is meant to stand out, and the Trailhunter is going to do that on its own, but one of the things it's also going to do, at least in theory, or designed to do, is do a little bit more crawling around, and likely getting closer to brush and rocks, and other things that are designed to scratch the vehicle as soon as you drive past them. With a matte black finish, you are likely going to see less of that scratch effect, or it's not going to bother you nearly as much, and it's just going to be a little bit easier and likely less expensive to go ahead and replace. Down lower, one thing we will notice between the Pro and the Trailhunter is that they do have the similar suspension layout, but two very different intents. Here in the Trailhunter, we do have upgraded shocks. We have off-road shocks. We have reservoirs. We have the capability you need, but with a very different design, because while this can go quicker than your average vehicle off-road, it's meant to do so a little more slowly, a little more purposely, and therefore it doesn't need to have nearly as much capability to dissipate that heat over and over and over again in quick succession. So we are going to see a slightly different layout here. Instead of Fox shocks, we get Old Man Emu, but that is going to be a name that a lot of off-road folks know and have very fond feelings for. Now below the fender flare and the suspension, we do have the same tire, but riding on a different wheel. And this is one of the biggest differences between the Pro and the Trailhunter, is the accenting colors. And I know that sounds small, but we've always known the TRD Pro to have red interior. It's got the red strip on the steering wheel, it's got red in the badging, but here on the Trailhunter, they're going for more of a golden bronze look. And here on these wheels, especially paired with this particular truck color, I'm a big fan. It is a slightly different style, not just color, but so far, I'm on board here. As we move along the side of the trucks, there are some differences we can see and some that we can't. So let's start with the ones we can't, and that happens underneath the vehicle. See, both of these have skid plating. They have protection for the vital components under the truck. But since one is meant to be around the ground a little bit more often, that one being the Trailhunter, then the TRD Pro, it gets a little bit more protection. Both are going to have skid plates up at the front, and they are going to be, to my knowledge, the exact same design, if slightly different style. Behind that, though, we are going to have more protection here in the Trailhunter. Both will have some level of protection under the fuel tank, but this is going to have one under the rear differential, and it's going to have it farther along the midsection of the truck. That's so if you do some rock crawling, intentionally or unintentionally, and you happen to fall down on said rock, you are likely to be more protected here in the Trailhunter than you are in the TRD Pro. But the TRD Pro would have wanted to go through that section much faster, which probably wouldn't have been possible, And there you can see the divergence in intent for these trucks. When it comes to falling on rocks, this is still going to be the better option because we do get a rock slider opposed to the rock protector. And this is designed to handle the weight of each half of the vehicle should you happen to find yourself on that rock. So while this is going to stick out a little bit more, and you might want to make sure you don't get your pants too dirty right after you go through a big old pile of mud, this is going to be a lot more protective, and it is going to be a little bit heavier than you find over on those rock protectors. The whole point of all the capability and protection built into this truck is so that you can go farther, while the TRD Pro is designed to go faster. And going farther means farther from civilization, farther from lights, farther from power. And one of the things that we find on this truck that we don't on any other Tacoma is some outboard bed lighting, so that when you do find yourself a little bit farther off the beaten path or exactly where you intended to do and you are setting up camp, you have a little bit more light already built into the truck and a lot more easily accessible than having to plug things in or find a switch or wire in a switch, because there are already auxiliary options for when you do want to add more to the truck. The other thing that we won't find is going to be the tailpipes, because on most of the Tacomas, they come out the rear. On the TRD Pro, we have a dual exhaust outlet here on the side, but for this truck, we are trying to keep everything tucked in best we can. Now that's going to play really well into the 5-foot bed, but we'll cover that in just a little bit. What we find here is a rear axle exit exhaust. Now, essentially that means that we are using the same exhaust that we find over the TRD Pro, but instead of extending it from here to here and out the back, we're simply going to be shooting it out the side right about here. And that's going to keep, again, everything tucked in a little bit and less to get damaged on the trail. The tailpipes over there on the TRD Pro are very good looking, but I would hate to scratch them up. And on this one, it's not very good looking, and that's so that you don't care if you do happen to scrape it up. Around the back of the vehicle, they're going to look very similar. The biggest obvious difference is that instead of saying TRD Pro, it says Tacoma, and instead of saying Trailhunter on it anywhere, we will simply have the Compass Rose Trailhunter logo here in the bottom left. Besides the suspension being very different between the two trucks, I think the biggest change happens cab and back. That really starts with the bed, and the most obvious visual difference is right up here in the bed rack. But this is a MOLLE panel bed rack, so that you can attach whatever you may want to the back here. And while this is not exclusive only to the Trailhunter, the ability to put a MOLLE panel rear rack on the truck, I do think it's a really nice touch and very small, but it's beautifully integrated here with the spoiler design built into the back of the cab. This is small, this is nice, but the biggest difference is how big the bed itself can get. Now you can see just in the back here, I have the TRD Pro, which comes exclusively in a 5-foot bed. But the Trailhunter can come in either a 5-foot or a 6-foot bed. And I think this is a perfect use of the flexibility here in the Tacoma profile to make sure that you have the truck that matches your needs. If you want to lean more towards overlanding, meaning you want to take your vehicle with all the items that you require to be off-grid, camping for a few days or a few weeks, you want a little bit more capacity. And that 6-foot bed is going to give you more space. The payload capacity between the two is actually essentially negligible. But with 6 feet, you can fit more stuff in it, because chances are you're not going over payload on any regular basis. The other thing is that this suspension is likely to handle your payload a little bit better. Not that they are not rated to handle the payload, but because that suspension is meant more for more travel, this is likely going to handle better on the road and off the road while you're weighed down. Same thing for towing a trailer, because at high speeds, you're rarely thinking about pulling a trailer behind you. But if you are crawling, if you are on the trail, if you are just off the beaten path, you're going to want to have as much stuff as you can. And if that includes a trailer, well, they both have the same towing capacities. Again, the weight put on the bed of this truck is going to be handled slightly better by the suspension here in the Trailhunter. One other point of consideration is how much daily driving you're going to do with this truck. And if this is a fun truck, then you can pick whichever one you want. But if you need a little bit more capability and you like the fact that you can get a 6-foot bed on a mid-sized truck so you don't have to have a full-size truck for your weekend adventures, this is a very compelling option. Not to mention that in the bed, you also get a built-in air compressor. While there are quite a few differences, large, small, seen, and unseen, between these two trucks, just a reminder, there's a lot that's similar as well. Wheels and tires, the same. Ride height, the same. Powertrains, meaning also fuel economy, and Overall fuel capacity, the same. Payload, similar, depending on how you configure it, but the intents are different, and I think Toyota has absolutely hit a home run with the packaging and the options here on the Trailhunter. Not because it's going to take away a lot of sales from the TRD Pro. It might a few, but those folks are going to be much happier with this option because it was a much better fit. Because pricing, also very similar. So let me know down in the comment section below, are you team TRD Pro or team Trailhunter? I have to say, if my money was on the line and for my personal use case, I'm probably leaning towards team Trailhunter. But I do also have to say that I had a great time in the TRD Pro on the high-speed course they had here available for us today, and that ISO seat worked absolute wonders. It's just the edge of where I can fit in the seat, and it takes up a lot of space in the rear that I may not be willing to sacrifice if I had a choice. No matter which team you chose, thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns, please remember to leave those down in the comment section below. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, all those other social places, and we'll see you in the next one.